Welcome to the Health Science Podcast, sponsored by the National Health Association. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and today I'm absolutely delighted to have as my guest Dr. John McDougall. Dr. McDougall certainly doesn't need any introduction from me. He's got an international reputation in the field of plant-exclusive nutrition and disease reversal. He's an author of 13 books that have affected millions and millions of people's lives, both locally, nationally, and internationally. Some of which are the McDougall Plan, McDougall Medicine, Challenging Second Opinions, the Starch Solution, several cookbooks he co-authored with his wife, Dr. McDougall's Plan for Maximum Weight Loss, to name just a few. He recently was given a Lifetime Achievement Award by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, which is more than well-deserved and probably late in coming. Dr. McDougall, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here, really. Welcome to the Health Science Podcast, brought to you by the National Health Association, the oldest organization in the world championing the extraordinary benefits of a whole plant food diet and healthy lifestyle, as well as water-only fasting. We believe that health results from healthful living and focus on evidence-based science that promotes the health of you and your loved ones, as well as the health of all animals and the environment. We feature experts from a cross-section of disciplines within the plant nutrition, vegan, psychological, environmental, and animal compassion sectors. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, the NHA's Director of Health Education.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be on your show. I hope we can give people some useful information today.
Yeah, I think we will. You know, it's interesting. I wanted to meet you for the longest time, but we have actually worked together tangentially. I happened to be one of the lecturers when you did your McDougall Plan at Hazleton in 1999 and 2000 for Blue Cross and Blue Shield.
Oh, that's why the name's familiar.
Yeah, Conrad back then had invited me. I was running a health retreat near Pritikin, near Jeff Novick, and I are really old friends for a very long time.
Yeah.
So Conrad invited me, and I actually came and lectured a few days in both of those programs. They were just amazing programs. What I wanted to say,
that was in the year 2000.
Yeah,
that was 23 years ago, Frank.
I know.
That was a long time.
I know. So 25 years ago. I know. But the results were amazing, and we'll talk about that because I want to get in depth with the McDougall Plan that you do and the McDougall Program that you run. But you know, when we start out, I want to give people just a little background. You know, one of the things I read when I was looking at your bio is that, you know, you were happy to be a physician that actually saw people get well. And, you know, long before lifestyle medicine that has gotten a heyday of popularity, back in the 70s, you were kind of on your own as kind of a pioneer, programming and pioneering this idea of disease reversal. So I would love, if you can, just to share a little bit of that background of your journey through Hawaii and the people you worked with on the sugar plantation that kind of laid the groundwork for you making these discoveries out of your own frustration with medicine to look at lifestyle and diet.
Well, you know, Frank, when you look back on things, you realize that it was necessary for you to run into these problems to be the person you are today. I was raised in Detroit, Michigan by parents that went through the Depression, the Great Depression, and they suffered from food scarcity. They didn't have anything to eat. And so my parents promised that their kids would never suffer like they did. So they fed us what was considered to be the best of all nutrition. And that meant getting plenty of protein and plenty of calcium. As a consequence of their education on proper eating, I ended up being a very, very sick person, almost died. As a young boy, I was terribly constipated with terrible stomach cramps. Age 7, I lost my tonsils due to all my milk drinking. When I was a teenager, I was oily and pimply, and I had no endurance. I was the last one on the track. And then at 18 years old, I suffered a massive stroke. And at age 22, at age 22 years of age, I was told I had a cholesterol of about 338. I weighed at my top weight about 220 pounds, which is a good, probably 100 pounds more than I weigh now. Anyway, because the way I was taught to eat, I suffered. So I have earned the right, ladies and gentlemen, to talk to you about what it's like to be sick and subsequently become well. I finished medical school at Michigan State University, met my partner in life, Mary McDougall, and we decided to go to what we thought was the most wonderful place on earth, which is to the islands of Hawaii. And I took my surgical internship at the Queen's Medical Center. But I hate being a surgeon, and surgeons hate me being a surgeon. I was terrible. I was offered a job at the end of my residency, 1 year of residency, on a sugar plantation on the Big Island. And they were going to pay me $17,000 a year to take care of 5,000 people who worked on the sugar plantation. And I did everything for them. I cut their babies. I did brain surgery in the middle of the night. I sewed up their wounds. I learned how to be a real doctor during my 3 years of having nobody to save me. I had no specialist around. It was me. Well, I also had the opportunity of being a doctor and trying to help people well on the plantation, 5,000 people. And I would treat them with the tools that I'd learned, primarily pushing drugs. And they never got well. And I thought I was a terrible doctor, no matter how hard I tried. No matter how many times they came to visit me, their chronic diseases persisted with whatever therapy I offered them, which was pills and sometimes surgeries. I should have understood defeat when I categorized them as chronic disease. Chronic means you never get better. But I didn't understand that, Dr. Sabatino. I didn't understand it because I was raised in the era of Ben Casey, Dr. Kildare, and Marcus Welby.
Me too.
And I knew what real doctors were supposed to do. I was a lousy doctor. I did some good things. I could sew up wounds and straighten bones and lance abscesses and prescribe some useful drugs. But by and large, I didn't have a very high opinion of myself. And I thought it was because of my poor education. So I went back into a high-tech university program, John Burns School of Medicine at the University of Hawaii, after 3 years to learn how to be a real doctor. And what I found, and we're going to go back to the plantation in a minute. What I found was that my mentors practiced the same kind of medicine I learned in medical school that failed me as a sugar plantation doctor. It's nothing different. I learned it right. It's just what they did doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back to the plantation. I told you I was a very sick young man because of my food. And as a consequence of moving to Hawaii, I started changing my diet. It was a new culture. And then getting involved with the plantation patients, I saw the health of my patients. I noticed that my first generation patients, which were people from their native land of Japan, China, the Philippines, Korea, they were trim, healthy, lived into their 80s and 90s, fully functional, avoiding the diseases I trained with. Well, the reason was, as I subsequently discovered, is they maintained their rice-based diet that they learned as children or young adults in their native lands, like the Philippines or Japan. And they kept these eating patterns when they moved to the Big Island. But their kids, they got influenced by Western living. We had Texas Drive-In right up the hill, the home of the malasada. And the kids got fatter and sicker, and it wasn't genes, same genes. Didn't change your heredity in a generation. Same kind of work for 100 years. Just the food. And by the time I got to the third generation, I was looking at overweight and sick people, probably the sickest and most overweight I'd ever met. They took over the American diet with great enthusiasm. So I could see that people living on starch-based diets were healthy, and those who switched to the Western eating pattern were they became sick. So anyway, I left the plantation after 3 years, and I became a board-certified internist, and that's where I did most of my research. And because of my passion for the science, I spent a little over 2.5 years in the medical library at the Queen's Medical Center, the Hawaii Medical Library. And anybody that has been to my home or knows me, they realize how much I love the literature. Yeah. Anyway, I lost my my loyalty to standard medicine during my residency when I saw how little they did to help. When it came to chronic disease, not auto accidents or acute care problems, but chronic illnesses, obesity, arthritis, cancer, heart disease, they did terrible. Anyway, and the literature confirmed that they did terrible. So I did a little over 2 years of internal medicine, especially. As I mentioned, a board certified internist. I hold medical licenses in most states in the country. And I'm also, or have been, I am currently still a assistant clinical professor at medical schools. I don't know how many at this time. Actually, tomorrow morning, I give a lecture to the staff at the University of Texas. Last week, I gave a lecture at the University of Utah to their staff. So, they're starting to get interested. The standard business starting to get interested because, I think doctors are, in general, really good people. And they realize that they're acting as salespersons for the drug companies, the device companies, and what they're selling is not great.
Right.
So I don't think many of my colleagues are very happy being doctors. Well, there's some that do a lot of good, like ophthalmologists and orthopedic surgeons, but the general doctor is pushing ineffective toxic drugs.
Well, if we fast forward from those years to even now, let's face it, the standard medical education is still training docs to be disease managers, not really providing the kind of care that you're talking about. Understanding that prevention is one thing, but even these major problems are actually reversible. Well, from that point, that's kind of when you went into having the opportunity to work at St. Helena with the Seventh-day Adventist Hospital, right? At that point.
I did. I went into general practice, and it really was general practice. I used to have to stock emergency rooms to make enough money to pay the rent. But after about 6-7 years, I had an opportunity, and that was a job offered to me by the people at St. Helena Hospital in the Napa Valley. They're a Seventh-day Adventist organization. Their history is one of concern about people's diets and lifestyles. Ellen White, who is their founder, recommended that the Adventists eat a vegetarian, actually quite vegan diet. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the founding principles of the Adventist health system, but they don't follow it. So they brought me as a token vegetarian to prove they really were sincere about this. I stayed for 16 years. I saw 3,000 people, at least. And, I took care of them personally. It was a good experience. After 16 years, I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to set up my clinic privately, so I did it in a resort in Santa Rosa, California, where I stayed 18 years. Dr. Sabatino, I have touched, cared for, talked to, prescribed to over 12,000 people.
Right. Well, John, before we go,
I'm a practicing doctor. I still do. Right now, what we do is I left the resort when COVID came out. Okay, we closed down our resort. They closed down the airlines. They closed down. We're out of business, So we decided rather than retire, which I could do, I decided what we do is set up a telemedicine program, and we have since August of 2020.
Well, John, before you jump into that, let me just take a short break because I want to come back and really delve into that with you. I think it's really important. We're going to take a short break. I'm here with Dr. John McDougall. We're going to take just a few moments to hear from our sponsor, the National Health Association, and we'll be right back. You're listening to the NHA Health Science Podcast. Dr. Frank Sabatino here, encouraging you to check out the NHA membership. For just $35 a year in the U.S., and $55 internationally, you'll have access to a wealth of resources, including our quarterly full-color print magazine, Health Science. Stay updated on the latest health tools, inspiring stories, and exclusive events like the NHA Conference and plant-exclusive cruises. Join us at healthscience.org/membership and make a difference in your life and the world. I'm Dr. Frank Sabatino, your host, and now back to the NHA Health Science Podcast, where more exciting insights await you. Welcome back to the Health Science Podcast. I'm here with Dr. John McDougall. And John, I wanted to ask you something. When I was reading the information about when you were at St. Helena is. It was intriguing to me that you were instituting your McDougall plan. You were really putting into play, but it was interesting how your colleagues were so rejecting of that because of in a way, the quotas that were necessary that they had for heart surgeries and other kinds of care in that establishment. And I could imagine the frustration of that because you're someone who was really trying to get people well. And, you think that everybody's going to be on board with the same vision. And then you realize that it's not just about that. Insurance companies want to get their kickbacks from certain care, and you had to confront all of that. But I found it interesting that long before any of these studies by Dean Ornish or Caldwell Esselstyn, the radiologists in that hospital were recognizing that your plan was actually reversing coronary artery blockage before any of those other things were published. Is that true? Did I read that? Did I read that correctly?
I don't know where I wrote it, but it's true. The radiologists, a lot of these people were my friends. In fact, one of the bypass surgeons, he and I flew airplanes together. So, it's not like we had any personal differences. It was the fact that, I didn't think they should be doing what they're doing because heart surgery does not save lives, and they know it. You at least ought to give somebody a dietary therapy approach first. And if they fail that, then they could go on to procedures that at best relieve chest pain. They do not save lives.
Right.
And I was working in the second best cardiac hospital in California at that time. That's what St. Helena Hospital was. They had the second best cardiac team in the state. So anyway, during my 16 years there, I sent many patients to the heart people for evaluations and the GI people, not many, a few. But the thing that you might note worthy is the fact that they never sent me a patient in 16 years.
Yeah, it's remarkable.
Except for themselves and their children and their wives. Right. But they wouldn't send their patients because they would have lost them. And
that's just remarkable.
If a reputation started in that community that Dr. McDougall was curing these people who were sick, been sick their whole life, and were scheduled for some major interventions by the team up there in the cardiac ward. If that rumor ever got around, that would be bad for business, and that was their problem. Dr. Sabatino, I gave 2 noontime conferences at St. Helena. They were standing room only. I believe me.
John, you're talking to the choir with me. I have the greatest respect, and it's hard for me to gather and imagine that even within the context of their own shortcomings, they would not recognize the gravitas and the importance of that information. It's hard for me in my mind to reckon with that. When the literature is strong, your clinical experience was strong, your results were so obvious, et cetera. And I noticed, I want you to touch on this. I noticed that there were a couple of times in your life where you kind of waged battles with informed consent laws to really make sure that people were being informed that these so-called benefits in morbidity and mortality that were related to heart disease care or medication care were not quite what people were thinking. You were cutting through the deception of that. Can you speak to that just a little bit, the way you address those informed consent laws in Hawaii and in California, both?
Well, first I want to address the answer to the problem. Is early on in my career, I figured it was the money. And now 55 years later, I'm absolutely sure it's the money. That's why I left St. Helena Hospital, is because they were afraid that if, the problem was the heart section of the hospital was generating 80% of the income compared to what we generated in income was, hardly anything. That's why I quit. I wasn't asked to leave. I quit. But I could see there was no future in dealing with an organization who put profits before patients. Right. And as far as your two informed consent bills or legislation I've been involved in legislation 3 times. Because again, I've tried to, I've tried to get this message on any way I could. I don't care. I'd hit below the belt if I had to. I'd take off all my clothes and I'd put carrots in my ears and I'd run down the street just to get the message out. I don't care.
Right.
I just want people to know, my patients to know. And so when I was still in Hawaii, I got a law passed on informed consent for the treatment of breast cancer. And that requires doctors to tell women that they have choices. No matter what choice they make, they're going to live the same length of time. It also tells women that they need to change their diet. So that was my first piece of legislation that was done in the early 80s. And then I proposed a couple of bills for the California legislature. And that was in probably around, well, let's see, it was around 2010, 28, that I proposed it. And it was a bill that would ask all doctors, cardiologists in particular, to tell the patients the truth, that heart surgery doesn't save lives. And the second bill that I tried to get passed was, again, to force physicians to tell patients that aggressive treatment of diabetes kills. And I got pretty far with those bills, but I was working with a lawyer that was going to get me into trouble. So I abandoned them. Next time I've got legislation, I did it alone, pretty much. It's SB 380. Look it up, SB 380 in California. It's a law on education of doctors about nutrition. What it does is it requires the 11 medical schools in California and the 500 hospitals to teach the medical people about nutrition. It was unanimously passed by both houses in Sacramento. It was signed by Governor Jerry Brown in September of 2011. It is law, but they don't obey it. But maybe they're starting. As I told you, I've got University of Texas tomorrow. I had University of Utah last week. Maybe they're starting to realize that food does have something to do with health. What a big step.
I hope so.
They don't have any problem figuring out with their dog or their prized cat.
Right.
But they somehow can't figure out that people.
Well, John, before we move on, let people know where they can find you online. What's the location that they can go to get more information about what you're doing?
Well, you know, I've been doing this for 47 years. We've been on the web since 2002, so that's 21 years. So it'd be pretty hard not to find me.
Okay.
Enter my name, enter the McDougall Program. The website is www.drmcdougall.com. And that's the website for our current business, which is education and also medical care.
Right.
I have, at this time, I have one doctor. Sometimes I have as many as 7 working with me. And we have people come from all over the world. And they join us through the internet. It's a telemedicine program. It's more effective than the hospital or the resort programs. It's an amazing thing. So
John,
you can find out about that.
Yeah, let's talk about the program itself, because I know that I read the article that you had published in the Nutritional Journal, where when you went to the Flamingo Resort in Santa Rosa for about a decade, you gathered data on close to over 1,600 people across, and you published that article on the effects of a 7-day low-fat starch-based program. Can you just share with the audience some of the results of that? I think it's eye-opening. This
is open access. You can again enter my name in Google or the National Library of Medicine, and you can read the article. It was a publication on about 1,700 people that went through our program over 10 years. Nobody was excluded. That's important. It's an observational study, and what we found is that on average, the drop in cholesterol in 7 days was 22 milligrams per deciliter. The average weight loss, eating as much as people wanted of delicious food, 3.5 pounds in a week. We got people on high blood pressure, and that means they had a blood pressure of 140 over 90 or greater. They had an average drop in blood pressure of 18 over 11 millimeters of mercury. We got nearly 90% of people off their medications, particularly those for diabetes and high blood pressure. So, you know, people did well, but, you know, the criticism I'll get back from my colleagues, if they ever take the trouble to look seriously at the work and feel threatened, is they'll say, well, it was only 7 days. You know, you could get any results in 7 days. Well, our next study was done at the Oregon Health and Science University, the medical school in Portland. That was a 1-year study. The average weight loss was the same, 22 points, drop in cholesterol, pretty similar. This was a study dedicated to treating multiple sclerosis. We got a decrease in insulin levels. We got a tremendous improvement in fatigue in people with MS. So that was a 1-year study. And then there was another 1-year study that was done totally independent of me. It was done in New Zealand, where they took patients in a community and they used the McDougall diet. Clearly, that's it, period. And what they found was similar results at 1 year that we got at 7 days. In other words, people stuck to the diet. The other important thing was the finding at Oregon Health and Science University that nearly 85% of people remain compliant for a year. Now, why did they do that? You can't people take drugs at that kind of level. Well, we ask them why. Why is because they got such tremendous results, not just with their MS, but their overall health.
Right.
And they love the food. And the nice thing now with the telemedicine program is people get to make the recipes in their home. We have support specialists that spend every day with them, not just during the 12 days. Every day they talk to them about what they're going to eat during the day, get their blood pressures, their blood sugars, etc., and guide them through the day for 12 days. Everybody that's in the program. But it goes on for a year, maybe longer. You know, we started the program in August of 2020, so we've been doing this for over 3 years now. We have people who still are getting follow-up care after 3 years. But
Yeah,
that's the kind of program we run.
I think the program is unbelievable. It's transformative, and I think take people through the fact that you go through the food, you go through that support that you talk about, but they have really good medical intake. They have incredible psychological support. I know you have people like Doug Lyle and some incredible people that lecture in your program, that you have really top-notch people. So this is really a truly, big picture approach that really nobody's really doing the way that you're doing.
Yeah.
And I want to highlight that in this conversation, because I think it's not just an online program where you get some recipes and this thing is really very intense with helping you change your relationship to food, support your choices, helping you make those transitions, and then getting the kind of food that's going to create those results that are going to make you want to stay with the program. So I think, that needs to be really emphasized. And I know that must have been a big shift, because I know you moved from the 10-day residential once we had the pandemic where everything was closing, and you went to this online approach now.
Right. Yeah, it took us a few months to develop the online program. But the nice thing about the online program is you learn everything in your home. The disadvantage of the hospital and resort programs is after 10 or 12 days, you got on an airplane, you went home, you had to clean out your cupboards.
Right.
This is already done for you. The day, typically when you call up to sign up for the program, an appointment with Dr. Lim, who's a board certified family practitioner, trained by me for 8 years, we'll see you within a few days, maybe that same day, who knows. And then when the program starts, we have an introduction. We get people to know each other. Yeah, we do it in several ways. One important way is they have a meeting every morning without staff, and they talk about us. This is extremely supportive. And, problems, if there are, they come out and we deal with them. But this is a time for the participants. Every morning for 45 minutes, Mary and I spend time with the participants in a fireside chat where we just answer questions. Every program I give 5 or 6 lectures, I'm there to supervise everything that goes on and also to take care of some difficult problems that come up, medical problems. We have not only my lectures, but Anthony Lim, MD, family practitioner, he gives lectures. Doug Lyle, who is the best psychologist in the world, isn't he?
He's the best, absolute best.
I'm not exaggerating, am I?
That's why I'm shaking my head. I totally agree with you.
These people said they couldn't be the best staff in the world. We have the best staff in the world.
You have an amazing staff. Jeff Novick is one of the premier nutritionists on the planet. And I know Jeff for 30 years. It's just amazing staff. Absolutely.
Yeah, Jeff, he's amazing. And then Heather, my daughter, who's 50 years old, she runs the program. And so she does a great job. Anyway, not only do we start you out with a far more intensive interaction and education than we could ever give at the hospital or at the resort, but we're with you. But we're much more familiar with the people. We get to know them even better. And we don't take a commitment for just 12 days. We take a commitment for, well, like I say, now it pretty much is for a lifetime. But in the contract, it's a year that we continue to offer you support. But like I say, people never seem to go away. And that's great. But we have phenomenal.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because it's online and you don't have the up close and in live personal touch. Is there a dropout rate? Is there some fallout rate that happens? No,
never. I mean, I can't think of a person that's quit. We get lab tests. They get them in their own community, so they just go down to the corner lab and get their blood drawn, send it into us. So we do all the things that we did in the other program. The difference is you don't have somebody cooking your meals for you, which we had at both the hospital and resort program. But you're not unless you're really rich. You're not going to have somebody cooking your meals for you. So
that's true.
Now you start out cooking them in your own home with one of our support staff helping you.
But do you do food prep classes, John? Is that part of the program?
Oh, yeah, we do. We have those too. We have eating out class. We have food preparation, clean out your kitchen. We have a big 12 days. And the other nice thing about the internet program is we have people from Shanghai and Sydney, and they're on 12-hour different schedule than we are. But all the lectures are recorded, and we adjust to your schedule no matter where you're located in the world. And nobody feels uncomfortable about not being in the good old USA or Canada or our hemisphere.
And the program, I know it's food centered, but you're addressing other pieces, I'm assuming too, like physical activity and things of that nature also. Yes.
We have Jack Dixon as our exercise physiologist.
Okay.
We think that's important.
Yes.
So I would say we have a pretty well-rounded program with the follow-up that you won't get anyplace else. And the best diet there is. There's no compromise in the McDougall diet, which by the way is I get a couple of criticisms. One is you're so strict. Well, Dr. Sabatino, when I first developed this 55 years ago or 50 years ago, I was a medical resident. I was taking people who had lost 90% of their heart. They'd lost 90% of their kidney function or their liver function. They were barely alive. And so what I was most interested in developing a diet that would save these most desperate people. But what I come to find out, even though I developed a diet without compromise, is number one, it's very tasty and very acceptable and very familiar. And number two, I used to think there were only a few very ill people. But you look out in the population or go to the shopping center, the grocery store, you see 80% of people are by your own eyeballs, obviously sick. 40% are obese and 40% are overweight. Half are pre-diabetic, 12% are frankly diabetic. Half have high blood pressure. Good. Most of them are suffering from autoimmune diseases. They're constipated, have indigestion. They're all sick. So I provide all of them with the best diet possible. And I don't teach them how to cheat. As my son, who worked for many years, told me when he was taking care of patients with these principles, he says, Dad, I don't have to teach them how to cheat. They do it just well on their own. So we teach them the best. We allow a little salt and a little sugar in the diet, which is different than most of the people who profess a very healthy diet. And it's also the other distinction about our diet is it's not based on vegetables. It's based on starches. Vegetables are yuck. Come on, guys. Come on. Broccoli, asparagus.
You're trying to tell me you're not turned on by kale, John?
No. Even cooked. And there are programs out there that are focused on these nutrient-dense foods. You can't do this.
Right.
People are starch eaters, which I'd like to dedicate a few minutes to. Our diet is based on starch, which you love. Oatmeal for breakfast. Hash brown potatoes for breakfast. Lunch and dinner, you have bean burritos. Mary made bean soup last night and bread. Mushu vegetables over rice. And this is what you love: rice, you love corn, you love potatoes, you love sweet potatoes, you love beans, peas, and lentils.
Absolutely.
And those are the foods that should constitute the vast majority of your plate. We throw a few green and yellow vegetables on there for interest, for their nutrient value, but it represents a small part of the plate: the broccoli, the kale, etc. A few fruits too. We think so. We don't recommend any oil.
Right.
No olive oil, no corn oil,
and
no animal.
That's consistent with the NHA diet too, where they're not adding any salt. But again, they're advocating not adding any salt, sugar, or oil. But I understand your point. You made me smile though when I went on your site. You described yourself as husband, father, grandfather, patient activist, and then potato lover, which I love because everybody really wants to eat a potato. And for the longest time, nobody was giving them license to do it. They were hiding out in the shadows, trying to avoid potatoes because they were associated with weight gain in their mind, which is absolutely absurd. But that's what was going on.
Would you like me to explain to you why we add a little salt, sugar to the food?
Yeah, please do, because I think people need to hear that.
The main reason is we want you to eat the diet.
Right.
And what you like is sugar and salt. The tip of your tongue tastes with pleasure, sweetness, and saltiness. You are designed as a salt and sugar seeker. We put salt and sugar on the surface of the food. We don't use it during cooking.
Right.
So that you have maximum taste with minimal sodium or simple sugar. Yielding to the fact that salt and sugar are not health food. But I want you to eat the food.
Right.
And I might make it taste good. And the thing that people miss when they sit down to the meals that you recommend and I recommend is salt. You put a little salt on the food and they love it. And it doesn't do any harm. In fact, I think it probably helps people to have a little sodium in their diet. Not a lot. Not a lot. Half a teaspoon a day is enough.
Right. One can argue, though, over time, as you know this, and I've seen it many years, as people do this eating plan more and more, their taste sensitivity becomes more acute, where they're not needing those condiments nearly as much. So one can argue that happens over time, but I understand your point.
It's only for acceptability.
Right.
The diet doesn't work if people don't eat it.
Oh, I agree 100%.
So we've got to make it as acceptable. We've done that by making it familiar, adding familiar spicing, and adding salt and sugar to the food on the surface in small amounts. Okay. And but no oil. You can't. The oil is poison.
Right.
Corn oil, safflower oil, olive oil. It's absolute poison.
John, have you relented at all a little bit? I know in the original study you did and the stuff you advocate, you're talking about a dietary fat content that's less than 10%, 7 to 10%. Have you relented over time on adding more fat-dense foods like nuts and avocados or any of those kinds of things?
Well, I didn't design the diet. Okay, the creator who designed the diet made it 7% fat. I didn't do it.
Okay.
So I'm just picking up the food. The way I pick 7% is potatoes are 1%.
Right.
Corn is 10%. Rice is 8%. Oatmeal 16%. You add all those together and you take an average, you get 7%.
Right.
So that's why I picked 7%. No added fat. There was no added oil. Yes. In fact, I eat extra nuts, seeds, and avocados. I told you I weighed 100 pounds more than I weigh now.
Right.
Weight loss is far more concern to me than weight gain.
Right.
So every morning I start out with 2 handfuls of almonds. It's got to be 400 calories. And often, very often, I'll eat packaged trail mix, a healthy one, that has like 400 calories of nuts and raisins and stuff like that in it.
Right.
So I'm eating these like mad. Unfortunately, I'm not the one who gains weight on nuts and seeds and avocados, but a lot of our patients do, and we warn them against it. I think where you run into a real problem is not with the whole nuts, seeds, and avocados, is when they turn them into butters, like tahini, peanut butter. It gets out of control. And plus, it's been processed, and the fat's more available when you process it than it would be in the original nut or seed. So, yeah, I still do this. So I don't think I was ever, it's cholesterol. That's the big no-no on nuts and seeds and
Right.
avocados, not me. I
Well,
never.
there are actual benefits that come with nut consumption too. So
Yeah.
I was going to
Oh,
ask you, how was
calories at least.
in terms of your other business? People don't know maybe about your real food business. Talk about that. I know you're in thousands of stores and you've got
Yeah.
these incredible products that can help people when they're shopping
Right.
for food. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, again, my whole goal is to get people to do this, and I try to do whatever I can, to make it accessible. Writing 13 national best-selling books, having a monthly newsletter since 2001. And I built 2 food companies. One right now is in probably 8,000 stores in the U.S. It's called Dr. McDougall's Right Foods. It's huge. I built it with a partner in the early 90s. Very few food companies are in business 30 years later. We're in business. We're on the front shelf in basically every supermarket and health food store in the United States. You look, Dr. McDougall's Right Foods. My picture's on the cover.
Absolutely. I know. And I got to tell you, I love your split pea soup. I love
All
it.
right. Yeah, the grandkids like that a lot too.
Yes.
So, and we run a clinic. I've taken over businesses like Blue Cross Blue Shield and public supermarkets. I ran programs there. I ran programs for less economically well-off programs, like we took care of the Baptist Church in Oakland. We took care of the people at the food bank in Sacramento. These are people without opportunity or education generally. If they want to be healthy too.
Yeah.
So the idea that, only well-educated, affluent, et cetera, people are interested in themselves, that isn't true. It's everybody's interested in themselves. You can't classify people. You got to give them a chance. And that's why my goal and my effort all the time I've been doing this, probably 48 years now, has been to get people to understand. They may want to go the standard medical approach, the pills, the surgeries, the devices, et cetera. But give us a chance first. Benefits start in 4 to 7 days. If in 4 months you aren't all better, go see the guys that will cut you up and give you bottles of pills. But give us some time. Give a diet. Correct the problem. The problem's the food. The problem's the food. It's not supplements. It's not lack of pills. It's not lack of surgeries. The problem is you're suffering food poisoning because you're eating the American diet. The food poisons come in 2 categories. Animal products, that means parts of animals or secretions, and free oils. Those are the poisons. And the diet that supports health is starch-based. You are a starch eater, a starchivore.
Starchivore.
A starchitarian. Get it. Once you get it, everything makes sense. Everything works. Bowels work, feel better, get off the pills. I got a good one for you. There's articles, several in the newspapers the last few days about Thanksgiving coming up and how upset people are who are on this new drug, the GLP-1.
I was going to ask, we were going to talk about
GLP-1. Yeah, like Wegovy and what's the other one? They got a whole bunch of them.
Ozempic and Wegovy. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So people are sick from taking these drugs. And they're embarrassed because they're afraid they're going to go to dinner on Thursday, and the other people at the table are going to notice they're not eating.
Right.
They're too sick to eat. By the way, this class of drugs is derived from the venomous poison of a reptile. The poison is as toxic as that you get from a diamondback rattlesnake. It comes from a Gila monster. And these are reptiles in the Southwest United States. They took the venom from the lower jaw of the Gila monster. And what happens when you get bit by a Gila monster is it hurts. And you throw up, and you have nausea, and you have diarrhea. Oh, same thing with Ozempic.
Right.
Yeah, they just figured out a way to make Gila monster poison last longer. And so they sell it to you as daily or bi-daily Ozempic or Wegovy. It lasts for a week, or they've just lengthened the time that you stay poisoned. It's poisoning. Cost you $17,000. to be on the diet for 38 weeks. And you only lose about 15 to, well, at most 20% of your body weight, 37 pounds. So you spent $17,000. For a year and a half, you were buying these drugs, and you lost on average 37 pounds. And then you stop losing, you reach a plateau. After 68 weeks, the need to survive matches the chronic poisoning, and you stop losing. I mean, this is almost as silly as the low-carb diets, the carnivore diets, the Atkins diet.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the most popular way to poison yourself. But that's a whole nother topic.
When people can have the incredible satiety, satisfaction, and weight loss that's so easy following the plant-based approach, the starch approach, it's just ridiculous. It really is. It's really, sometimes it's criminal, John. It really is criminal, actually, truthfully.
I've said that. Yeah, I've said that.
So as we wind this down, is there any final message or words you want to share with the audience out here?
Yeah, I think you need to find a doctor who considers you a healthy, good, intact person who is just not following the right rules. There's nothing wrong with you. What's wrong is the message about how to support your health and the way to get you well, which is currently prescribed in the form of pills and potions. But nothing wrong with you. Fix the food. It's the food. It's the food. I don't care whether you stop exercising. I'd like to see you quit smoking, quit drinking, quit the cocaine. I'd like that. But you're still going to get better if you just fix the food. And it's inexpensive too. And see how much money you save on pills and surgeries and so. Yeah, it's just absolutely, it's criminal. You said it. You obviously believe it like I do. And I think because you've been thinking about it like I have for 47 years.
We've watched it over 4 or 5
day.
decades, John. We've seen it enough. You know what I mean? We've seen it enough. Well, I can't thank my guest enough, Dr. John McDougall. John, thank you for coming and sharing your passion, your insight, the information that you have. And I urge our audience to follow Dr. McDougall, look at his program. If you need that online program, it will be a lifesaver. It's transformative. The location will be in the show notes. You can see the URL. And I want to thank Dr. McDougall for really taking the time to be with us here today. And I want to thank all the people out there that have joined us today. Without you, we can't do what we do. I want to thank you for being part of this active, healthy community. And on behalf of the National Health Association, I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and I look forward to being with you on the next episode of the Health Science Podcast. Thank you so much. You've been listening to the Health Science Podcast, brought to you by the National Health Association. Thank you for joining us today and for your commitment to evidence-based health science that backs a whole food, plant-exclusive lifestyle and contributes to the well-being of all people, animals, and our environment. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino. Be sure to leave a rating and a review, and we'll see you on the next show.